I'm gonna give a quick walk around of my camping rig today. I guess you could call it an overland rig. I camp out of it. I use it for hitting some light duty trails, and I think that kind of qualifies as overland these days. So I'm gonna start on the outside and then we'll go to the inside and look at the sleeping setup in there. Now to start off with, I've got, I believe it's a US off-road winch plate. I'm not 100% sure on the manufacturer. It's been so long since I installed it, and I also bought it secondhand. We got some cheap LED lights off of Amazon. The suspension on the FJ is stock in the rear, and up front we have some Bilstein 5100 shocks which level it out. So the Bilstein shocks use the factory coil spring, and it replaces the shock on the inside of the strut. And there are a few different settings you can use to raise or lower the height of the strut. Basically applies more or less preload on the factory spring, and I essentially have it set right now for the front of the FJ to be just slightly lower than the rear. I think the front was lifted at least an inch when I installed them. Again, it was a couple years ago when I put them on there, so I'm not 100% sure on that, but either way, they've been working well for the past 50,000 miles, and I have no complaints. Running factory FJ Cruiser wheels with some BF Goodrich all-terrain tires. These are the KO2s in a size 285/70/17. I think that equates to about a 33-inch tire if you were using the standard American system. Got some rock rails here. No idea who makes them. I got them off of Craigslist used. Got a super good deal on them. They bolt to the frame in, I believe, 4 locations here. As I said, the back suspension is stock. Got a full-size spare in that 285/70/17 size. And more of the same on the driver's side here. One other thing I didn't mention on the outside was these window visors up front, and you will see why those are important shortly. All right, on to the inside. It's the end of the season here, so it's a little messy. I'm actually going to be taking this platform out this afternoon, which is why I'm making this video right now. It'll be going back in the spring, but I usually take it out for the winter. So this is the sleeping platform right here. Dig into that a little bit more later. Up front I've got just seat covers. You know, when you're out in the woods, you get a little muddy sometimes. It's nice just to be able to take the seat covers off and wash them. As we come around the back, you'll be able to see some of the storage we've got underneath here. Like I said, it's a little bit messy right now, but let's pull this stuff out and see what we've got in here. So just a side note, when I'm camping, I generally camp at a campsite. I live in the northeastern US, and we don't have a whole lot of public land out here. Unlike the West Coast, where there's just tons of land, a lot of dispersed camping. Most of the camping I do is at campsites. I will occasionally kind of stealth camp if I find a good spot, but that doesn't happen too often. So keep that in mind as I'm going through this stuff here. First off, we've got this little table here. This was just a freebie I got a while back. That basically sets up, you can see just the surface area of the table right here. That's just enough for me to put my stove on and cook on. Typically I will use a picnic table instead because I'll be at a campground, but I have that just in case I need it. Next, we've got this little water container here. This is just a garden sprayer from Home Depot, I think it was. All I did was I cut off the end and put a little garden hose attachment on it, and this is what I use to clean my dishes, clean my hands. Anything that needs to be cleaned, I will use this for. Next, we've got a camp chair. This is just your generic folding camp chair. And this is my tent. Like I said, quite often I camp at a campsite, and if the weather's nice, I generally prefer to stay in the tent over the FJ. There's a little bit more room, it's a little bit nicer, but if it's going to be rainy or cold, I will definitely sleep in here, and sometimes I will just sleep in here out of the convenience of not having to set up a tent either. But it's good to have options. Next up, we've got just your budget Coleman propane stove from Walmart. On the inside, I wrap everything with little pieces of a moving blanket to keep it from rattling. That's helped quite a bit in keeping my sanity while driving down bumpy dirt roads. This bin right here with the yellow lid contains all of my kitchen items. If it doesn't fit in that bin, I don't bring it. It's easy to get overloaded on kitchen stuff, so that's what I confine myself to. I only ever cook for 2 people. If I was cooking for 4 or 8 people, maybe I would go with a bigger bin or a second bin, but everything that I need fits in this bin. So we've got plates, we've got a package full of utensils, we've got some condiments in there, lighter, hand cleaner, and then in the rest of this we've got some dish soap, we've got the pots, we've got the pans, we've got a frying pan down here, we've got cooking spray, cutting board, aluminum foil, basically everything you need to make a kitchen. And behind that bin lives this other bin. So this is kind of a catch-all. We've got a hatchet in here, got a lot of fire starting stuff, some birch bark, newspaper. I've got a 12-volt air pump for inflating tires if needed. This is where I keep the propane for the stove. I've got a 12-volt inverter if I need it. Like I said, it's just kind of a catch-all. And then the last thing on this end right here is just a tool set. This is a Harbor Freight mechanics tool set. This has most of the tools you would need. If I'm going somewhere that I know I'm not going to have cell service and is somewhat remote, I will bring extra tools beyond this. The FJ is pretty new. It's 2007, so it's still in the age of being fairly reliable, and I haven't had to break any tools out of this, luckily, yet on the trail, so hopefully it stays that way. Then coming around to the front end of the platform, on this door I'll usually keep some hand wipes, bug spray, sunscreen, that kind of stuff. Over here I've got a 12-volt Dometic fridge freezer. Fits right in here. I actually kind of built the platform around that. I'm getting ready to take this out so I don't have the strap on it, but usually I'll run a strap from some little eyelets I have in here through the handle and a few other places. But you'll also notice I don't have a back seat here, so I completely removed the back seat. It is in storage, and I installed this piece of plywood, or I guess this is technically MDF, in its place, and I just bolted it to the hinges that the seat normally pivots on, and that actually lies really flat with the back over there, so it's pretty easy to slide things in and out if needed. And as we keep moving this way, there's a void right here. So you see the seam in the plywood. This is usually where all this stuff I had in the back comes up to. And then the area in front of this seam, including over here, is all additional storage that I can use for other things like clothes or whatever gear I'm bringing with me for the adventure I'm on. If you look at this platform, it's not very long and would not be very comfortable to sleep on. So what I did was made an extension that swings up this way to extend the platform, and depending on how tall you are, I will get some dimensions on that later, but depending on how tall you are, you could sleep straight this way or even diagonally. I think even, you know, up to probably a little over 6 foot tall, you can comfortably sleep on a diagonal here. So to hold this thing up, I've just got this little peg that sticks in here. It just sits underneath there. It's not held in place by anything, but it doesn't matter since we're not driving around and I've never had it fall down on me. Now, as far as the design goes, this is all 2x4s that make up the frame for this, and then we've got plywood on top. We've got a leg on each side that comes down here, this side, that side, and then the back corners. You could probably see when we were back there, same thing. So it's got 4 vertical supports. This front section here, I don't really know why I boxed this in. Probably next year when I install this, I'm just going to take these 2x4s off and put the hinge that's on here straight onto the plywood. I don't think this is needed, and it will help save some space. So as we move underneath here, you can see we've got some storage. Right here we've got this portable tent, I guess. I don't really know why I carry that. I've never used it. I probably won't put it in here again next year. And then we've got this extra piece of plywood right here. What this thing is used for is covering up the hole for the fridge. So this will lay right in place over the fridge and give you some support if you end up laying in that spot. So this is a very comfortable setup for one person sleeping. If I'm ever sleeping two people in here, I will always put that piece on top of the fridge over there. And you'll notice the other side doesn't have this little thing that swings out. Usually I'll just throw our backpacks and some bags, coats, whatever over there, enough to build it up to about the same height, and it usually works out just fine. And we'll take one more look under the platform here. This is just all the room we have to store our clothing, gear, backpacks, whatever we're bringing. It's not a ton of space, so if, you know, depending on how long the trip is that you're going on, you may need to pack a little light, but that has never been an issue. From the very end of the platform down there to this end, we're at 5'9", and if we go at a diagonal, you can see we're at about 6'9", coming across this way. And the short section without the swing out is 4.5 feet, and for a width we are right at 4 feet. When you're sleeping, obviously all these windows are nice places to kind of lose your privacy, right? So what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought some cling on window tint. I think I got 85% or something like that. So I made a template for each of these windows, cut it out, and when I'm camping somewhere inside the FJ, I will actually stick them onto the window, and that pretty much blacks out the inside for the most part. And then one other thing we've got here on the back is I modified the back door to be able to open from the inside. So we've got this little button that pushes down right here, so if the door's closed and you're on the inside, you can just push this button down, the latch will release and you can push the door open. And you might say, but if the door's locked, you're not going to be able to open it. Well, we've also got that solved with this switch right here. So this here is a momentary switch that ties into the lock system on the FJ, or at least on the back door. So if we push it this way towards the outside of the door, like we're trying to escape, that will unlock the door here. And if we push it in towards the inside, like we're staying on the inside for the night, then that locks the door. And this also opens the rear window if you hold it down. For ventilation at night, what I will typically do is roll down the windows a couple inches, an inch and a half, 2 inches, and put these window sunscreens on here. So these I think are made for, you know, protecting babies and children from getting sunburned when riding in the car. But what they are is just a mesh screen. So I can roll down the window a couple inches, not worry about bugs getting in. And if I don't roll it down too far, then I have these visors here that keep rain from getting in if it rains at night. So these visors and the screen work pretty well together, and this generally regulates the temperature pretty well. If needed, you can pop the rear window open, but only on the most hot, humid, rainy nights does it ever seem to get too hot in here. So that's pretty much my setup here. It's obviously probably not as good as a camper van, but for my purposes it works quite well, since I like to get off the beaten path, and a lot of places I go with this, a camper van probably wouldn't be able to make it. I've been using this setup since 2019, so this would be the 3rd year I've been running it, and it has worked quite well. I haven't actually changed a whole lot over the years. This is still pretty much the original setup I came up with, and I don't see making any changes moving forward. I suppose the only thing may be that it would be nice to add another flip out section behind the driver's seat instead of having to stack backpacks and bags and everything. But other than that, I've been quite happy with it. The FJ has performed very well off-road, hasn't left me stranded on the trail yet, and hopefully it won't. It's got 186,000 miles on it now, I think, and we'll probably be at 200,000 by this time next year.